So, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. My name is Sarzar Sabir from New Jersey. I am currently a financial representative, and I'm very happy and glad to participate in TASMiNA's Horizon project. This is a continuation of an introduction series of TASMiNA from our community professionals, educators, and entrepreneurs, community activists, etc., who have succeeded in their life in North America. The main objective of this program is to learn and follow the success of their achievements. This program can especially be useful for our young adults who can benefit from these life stories by seeking assistance and guidance from them. The title Horizon reflects a point of change in a person's life. So today I'm going to interview Dr. Muzakir. He's working as a family physician in Ottawa, Canada. Some of you may recognize him from his participation in TASMiNA activities in the past, mostly from the UK, Canada, and US circles. Dr. Muzakir, assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Wa alaikum salam wa rahmatullah Sarzar.
And my first question to you is, could you give us an introduction of your childhood life in Sri Lanka, like your town, your parents, your early education in Sri Lanka?
As I said, first and foremost, thank you for having me, and it's great pleasure joining my fellow TASMiNA members. Originally, I'm actually from Galhinna. Galhinna is a little village in the it's a suburb of Kandy in Sri Lanka. So born there and went to school up to the age of around 10 years of age. Studied Tamil up until that point, and what you would call primary school here, is that right? Or you call them elementary? Is that what you call in North America, right? Elementary, that's right. And then I moved on to Akurana to study to an international school from 10 years onwards. And that's where I spent about good 6-7 years of my life, the early teenage years, up to my O-levels, as we call it in Sri Lanka, what you would call middle junior. Is that right? Is that what you call up to about grade 8, 9? Yeah?
After elementary school, we have middle school and then high school. Yeah.
So up to the age of around 16, 17, I was in Akurana. Went to an international school, studied English.
That's good. And so basically, you went to school there. You went to Sri Lanka. You had early education in Sri Lanka.
That's right.
And then after that, when did you end up leaving Sri Lanka?
So in my late teenage years, I'm not entirely sure whether it was in my late 17 or whether I was actually 18 when I left Sri Lanka. And then I went to England after that. After going to England, that's where I studied my A-levels, and that's a couple of years there, and then I took a gap year out to go and earn some money to fund my studies, and then I went on to study, went to university to study medicine at the University of Bristol in England.
Oh, wow. And what would you say, was there anything specific or anything in particular that motivated you to leave Sri Lanka and to pursue that education?
Good question. I mean, in the days that I studied in Sri Lanka, if you went to an international school, then you needed big pockets to go and study abroad. You couldn't study anything beyond O-levels. So you could actually, if you could fund your A-levels, you could study up to your what you call college studies here. But it's not easy to. So you had to find a way to study abroad if you studied English, because you couldn't get into the university system there. So that's what made me leave Sri Lanka and end up in England at the age of 18. And life started there afterwards.
Oh, that's very interesting. Now, was there any way your family or the community contributed to you in your life? Any role model that you may have had that you followed through?
Well, back home they say, especially in your childhood years and your teenage years, community plays a big role in your in bringing you up. Your parents will tell you, or the parental generation will tell you, parents care for you and love for you, but you're brought up by the broader community. Anything you did, your parents would soon find out, even if you were away from home. So community kept an eye on you. So that's that played an important role in sort of keeping the checks and balances on you, if you like. the broader community, when you look at who are they, well, your immediate family, your extended family, your neighbors, your community at large. So all of these constitute your community, right? I mean, in my case, my early times in Galhinna, followed by my teenage years in Akurana. So I think both these communities, both these, villages or towns, whatever you like to call them, they played a big role in shaping us into what we are today. And of course, we carry fond memories of the times there. And some of my best times of my life, or the memories that you carry, are from these two sort of parts of your life, if you like. Definitely, that's right.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, that's very interesting. Thank you, for sharing that. And then after you went to, I know after you went to London, you did proceed with a higher education. I know that you studied in London for your medical degree. What would you say that experience was like?
So, if I can expand those time blocks for you, a little bit more on that. I ended up in England as barely 18 at that time. So, home away from home. Now, recently, my daughter was asking me these questions. I just realized, I spent greater part of my life in England than I did in Sri Lanka. 20 years plus in England, only 18 years in Sri Lanka. So, it was actually home from home, meaning from one place to the other. And it's a big challenge going into a new country with new culture, new everything. And when you are a teenager, it's even a bigger challenge. And especially when you don't have many people to support you. I had to go and start my studies there. So before you start studies anywhere, you have to have some money. So you have to fund yourself, in other words. So I had to take almost a year out to financially sustain myself. And I want to acknowledge this in that one of my biggest sort of guide and support and help was my cousin Mansoor. May Allah bless him, guide him, support him, help him, everything. With all his life, he was a huge source of help, support, and guidance while I was there. And of course, it's. I look back at that stage of my life. It definitely wasn't easy because I had to study full time and I had to support myself financially. And at sometimes I had to do two jobs at the same time. So it is a lot of hard work. And Alhamdulillah, all praise to Allah, I was able to get through that phase in life. And especially when you are trying to get into a medical school, you have to be laser focused in your work and in your college and in your studies as well. So having to do some work on top of that certainly wasn't easy. But then again, it was no mean feat, and all thanks to Allah. And I wouldn't be here without the help of Allah where I am. And that certainly was one of the hardest sort of stages of my life, if you like. Alhamdulillah. So thanks to all the people who were there at that moment in my time to guide me, help me, and support me, of which I must admit Mansoor Nana was in the forefront. So and then this was all happening in the cosmopolitan and the big city of London. So it wasn't cheap either, So then I had to I went on to study medicine in Bristol. Which was quite away from London. It was the southwest of England. And then, a different chapter in my life started.
Right. No, yeah, that's great. I mean, I know it could definitely be so difficult to get all that started up in a big city like London. That's crazy. And alhamdulillah, with Allah's help, you were able to do it.
Absolutely.
So,
mashallah, alhamdulillah, barakallah, exactly.
Yeah, so after you finished your medical degree, you went to school in London, you finished all of that. Where did you go? What did you do? Did you pursue the medical field in London? Did you go to Sri Lanka?
Interesting. So that was another big chapter in my life, if you like. I spent altogether 7 years in Bristol and the surrounding area. So normally what you do in the English system, if you like, you have to do a 5-year medical degree followed by a residency. which could last anywhere between 3 to 5 years. So I was fortunate enough to be out of the 150 people in the medical school, I was in the top sort of 10-15% or whatever you like to call it. And after graduating, I was given the opportunity to carry on doing what's called an academic medical fellowship. What that means is in addition to being a physician and a doctor, you are allowed the opportunity to actually become a scientist, if you like. So it's a fellowship, a research fellowship. So I was able to do that in combination with the university and the teaching hospital. And I undertook some research projects in there. And Alhamdulillah, with a lot of support from the university and from the teaching hospital, while I was doing medical work, while I was doing my residency, I was undertaking this fellowship, which allowed me to do some scientific research. And in the process, alhamdulillah, when you are a scientific researcher, your output or your achievement in that, your graduation is, how much research you do and how much publications you do. And alhamdulillah, I was able to do some important piece of research there and publish some of my research findings in some reputable medical journals. And alhamdulillah, again, all praise to Allah, I was able to do some presentations in international scientific conferences and some national British scientific conferences as well. And that was that sort of 5 to 7 year chapter in my life. And the next stage involved me moving back to London to do a further sort of residency to broaden the medical sort of exposure, if you like. Doing various sort of different specialties in medicine before becoming an independent licensed practitioner.
Oh, wow. That's very interesting. So you got to, go around and do all that and then become a scientist as well as a doctor.
Alhamdulillah, all praise to Allah. Yes.
Yeah. Alhamdulillah. That's cool. The fellowship. That's very interesting. And now my understanding is that you were in the United Kingdom and then eventually you came to Canada where you are now. Can you explain how that happened and how you're able to find success in Canada?
So the transition, I finished my residency and got my independent license to practice back in England around the 2009-10 times, where I graduated as a family physician. That's when you sort of, your medical career begins and where you start sort of maturing as a physician, if you like. Obviously, in life as well, you get married and you have kids, and I was in my mid-30s at the time, early 30s-ish. So I started as a family physician, doing a few jobs, and I juggled what I would call a portfolio of jobs. So not just one job. You start doing multiple jobs within a week. So you sort of broaden your horizon, if you like, doing various things. So in addition to working as a family doctor, as a family physician, I sort of climbed the hierarchy, if you like, and I got into things like teaching medical students and training doctors, as well as doing medical management job, in other words, senior roles within sort of medical offices when there are other medical professionals working, other doctors, nurses, that kind of thing. So, at one point I almost assumed the role of a medical director in a large medical facility. And then, of course, at one point I became an owner of a clinic with a few other doctors and developed my own business and all of that. All of this was happening within the space of about 5-6 years. So by the time, around 5-6 years into it, I felt like I'd done a lot of things and I wanted a bit of a change of scene. And that's when I thought, you know what, I need to broaden my horizon a little bit here, talking about horizons, right? And I thought, alhamdulillah, I've done lots of things here and I just need a change of scene and I want to go and see new systems, new other things. And that's when I thought, I better explore, beyond the shores of the United Kingdom, beyond the shores of England, see what I have. And I
Right.
looked at, at one point I was looking at moving to the United States. Then I looked at Canada. But then I found Canada is a natural transition from England. And the licensing and all of that as well, it's slightly simpler to come to Canada. And this all happened about 4 or 5 years ago. And here I am. Before you realize, you're in Canada. You've got your own office. You've got your own practice, and before you know, you've got the children are growing, and before you realize, you're rooted in one place.
Yeah, another new country, another new experience.
Exactly. That's right.
Get to
That's right.
assimilate to a whole new environment. That's great. Now, how would you compare your stay in the United Kingdom and then Canada? Like, what was the pros and cons of each, or would you say?
It's a world of difference in the sense, of course, there are lots of similarities, but when you look at things in a larger sense, how the systems functions, government function, and how things operate, people's attitudes to society, government, and government's attitudes and society's attitudes to people, there are a world of difference between the two continents. Europe, as you know, is a continent with much more history, much more sort of cultural mix and all kind of things. Whereas North America is relatively, I refer to North America, I refer to Canada and the US as North America. It's a newer continent, newer country. People's attitude to life is different. People's attitude to civil liberties, individualism, people's attitude to personal liberties. It's slightly different. So Europe as a continent tends to be a bit more socialist in its approach to matters. I think North America as a continent approaches things slightly differently. So for me, it's been a huge learning sort of experience last 3 to 4 years, understanding this mysterious continent. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, you're right. It can certainly be a little mysterious sometimes.
Right. Exactly.
Very interesting. Now, one other thing that we were wondering was, we know you're a very professional person. You've went to school, you've had a lot of education, a lot of things like that. What would you say your hobbies are? Do you have any hobbies like sports activities? I know you're very involved in like the Islamic classes for kids and lectures. Can you explain to our viewers about this?
Of course. Well, when you're a family man with 3 young children, the word hobby sometimes goes out of the window because your days have to be structured, your days have to be planned to the hour and the minute. Your time has to be rationed to the second, if you like. Especially someone like myself with a young family and running a busy practice. And I do have other outside interests, if that's what you're asking about. I guess photography is a real passion of mine. I think it stems from my passion for traveling and exploration. Photography is one of those things that you embrace whether you like it or not. Yeah. So that's one of my passions. And I really love traveling. That's another sort of passion of mine. Beyond this, if you're asking about sports, tennis is my real sport. But I must admit, I don't play it as much as I used to 4 or 5 years ago. Beyond those two things, I'm also I love reading. When I say reading, if I wasn't a doctor, people tell me I would end up being a historian or an economist. Why? Because those are the two sort of disciplines that really sort of, that really I immerse myself in. So, if I'm not practicing medicine, if I'm not taking photographs somewhere, then I'm probably reading something about economics or history, or if I'm watching a documentary on one of these things. So that's my life outside being a doctor, if you like. As for you did mention about Islamic class. It's more than Islamic. It's more about I like personal development is one of those things that I really like to talk to people about, whether in an Islamic perspective or in a behavioral perspective or a psychosocial perspective, if you like. So that's the other thing that actually gets me into public speaking and lectures and seminars and all this kind of thing. So if it's it's on one of these things, if you like.
That's very interesting. Yeah, that's good to know, that your whole life isn't just about one thing, that there's so many things that take place in life.
Exactly.
Alhamdulillah. And lastly, I do want to end this interview with asking you, what advice would you give to our younger community, the younger generation in general? What would you think is important for them to know?
Okay, for young people, let me structure this advice or this for my pennies worth of advice, as we call it in England, or for my 10 cent worth of sort of experience in my life, for my 40 years of life, if you like. Your life is your master and the world is your oyster. I will expand on that. You will get to know what I mean by this when I talk about the following principles. I'm going to share 5 principles for you to succeed in life. And you will understand what I mean by your life is your master and your world is your oyster. Point number 1, learn from everything and everyone around you. What I mean by that is life is your greatest lesson. You're going to be learning until you die, whether you like it or not. Okay? The intelligent ones appreciate that early in life. Others close their mind to it. Try to learn from your successes and your own failures. Try to analyze and see why you succeed in some things and why you don't in others. Try to learn from the young and old, your parents and your children. Try to learn from your friends as much as your enemies. Life is a journey full of learning. If you embrace it with the right attitude, you'll be very wise in your life. Okay? That's point number 1. And just to expand on that is also, reflection is your best teacher. What I mean by reflection is learn from everything that goes right for you and everything that goes wrong for you. Find time for yourself. Find time to reflect. Reflect on your day, reflect on your deeds, reflect on your achievements, because we are in a life where we're on that constant hamster wheel where you don't get time to sit and rest. So whether it's your Fajr prayer time, whether it's your late night prayer time, your Witr time or whatever, find time to reflect and learn. Point number 1. Number 2, this is specifically important for college students and everybody who's young and old in some ways. There is no substitute for hard work. Okay? Hard work is what gives you everything that you achieve. I was fortunate enough to have a teacher who once told me it is almost like a poem, The old saying goes, the men that reached and kept great height did not reach there by sudden flight. Rather, they, while their companions slept, were toiling upward through the night. It sounds very Shakespearean, meaning the point it's saying is that don't look at people who achieved big heights and think that they just happened to get there by a flight. It was toil, hard work, sweat. Absolutely. I think some of your viewers would have also heard of the saying, success is 1% inspiration, 99% perspiration. So no substitute for hard work. Keep working hard. You will have people telling you, or if anyone told you that you could make a quick buck without working hard, well, few people would have succeeded by that method, but countless numbers have failed. So feel free to try that, but no substitute for hard work. Point number 3, strive for excellence. What I mean by that, try to be the best in everything you do. No matter what job it is. Again, I was fortunate enough to have another teacher at high school who used to say, again, nothing against road sweepers. They do an important job just like everybody else. The saying was, he said, even if you end up being a road sweeper, try to be the best road sweeper that there is. Meaning,
Right.
try to excel in absolutely everything that you do. And you know, in Islamic philosophy, we have this concept called ihsan. Ihsan meaning striving for the best. You know, I've done whole series of lectures on this. So, you know, it's beyond the scope of what we are talking today. My point being, I think you get the idea. Strive for the best. Strive for excellence in everything you do. You can't go wrong with it. Okay? Point number 4. Be passionate with everything that you do. If you do something half-heartedly, you won't deliver good results. You may do it for somebody else. You may do it to please somebody else. But you won't do the best. You know, you won't give your best shot to it. You've heard that thing, you know, where I don't know whether it's a proverb or it's a biblical quote where they say, input is from human, output is from God. If you did your best, Allah will make sure that your output is adequately, you know, compensated. Last but not least, hold yourself to account. What I mean by this is don't let other people find out things about you, or in the sense, don't let them, you know, don't do something half-heartedly where people say, look, he didn't do a good job. If you hold yourself account, if you set your goals, if you set your standards, you can't go wrong if you set yourself to account to yourself. Again, in Islamic philosophy, the term here is ihtisab, self-accountability. Believe you me, if you stick to this principle, you will bring out the best person within yourself. And guess what? You'll be at the top. When I say at the top, I'm not talking about just your job. Spiritually, you'll be the best you can be. You'll be the best servant of Allah. At work, you will be the best employee. In your profession, other people will look up to you because you will shine above everybody else. Just follow these principles, inshallah. So again, those are my pennies worth of, you know, gems to share with you. If you can hold them, you know, if you can pick anything from them at all.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, that was extremely insightful. You know, I'm sure that inshallah the younger generation will definitely find that to be very helpful. You know, so alhamdulillah, thank you so much for sharing that. Appreciate that.
Well, it's been a great pleasure to be with you. Thank you for having me again.
Absolutely. And I want to thank you again, you know, from TASMiNA. Thank you for giving your valuable time, you know, for this interview. Thank you for sitting here with me and answering these questions. And, you know, I think a lot of people are going to benefit from this. So thank you so much.